As time progressed on SmackDown, Edge saw great potential in his proteges as the cult of Leviticus dominated for a period, but all of that would begin to change once Leviticus suffered his first loss, ending his undefeated streak by losing his NXT Championship back to Kenny Omega at NXT TakeOver In Your House, with the aid of AJ Styles, who hadn't forgotten about what happened at this year's WrestleMania. Tensions would then quickly begin to rise amidst the cult leader and its namesake, as Edge would be none too pleased about the way Leviticus lost his championship and quote-unquote embarrassed the cult, especially as Damian Priest was enjoying success around the same time, making Levi's miserable failure all the more potent, becoming IC champion for the first time in his career by defeating the one and only Ricochet. Edge would then shockingly berate Levi with some harsh words for failing him, and Levi, even though not a fan on the inside of Edge's words, understood his assignment and promised he would redeem himself within this year's star-studded Money in the Bank ladder match, featuring other heated rivalries such as VYBE against the Brothers of Destruction and even Matt Riddle, who had yet to rid himself of the wicked Karrion Kross. But unfortunately, once again falling short and failing to deliver on behalf of Edge's wishes, Levi was on the receiving end of the omnipotent leader's wrath on the following episode of SmackDown. But on this day, it was Levi who saw clearly. You're a failure, Levi. You failed me, you failed Damian, and you failed your whole cult, which I was generous enough, by the way, to name after you. And for what? You're pathetic. You're a loser. And someday, Levi, it'll be as clear to you as it is to me. Sometimes you have to make the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good, and I now see clearer than ever what that needs to be. Honestly, it blows my mind that your daughter is getting into this business now. I mean, who the hell is she going to use as a role model straight out of high school? It sure as hell ain't you. You've done nothing to inspire anyone, and you sure as hell don't inspire me. This is the last time I'm gonna tell you. Keep my daughter's name out of your mouth. Oh, what's the matter, Levi? Things getting a little too real for you? You are a joke. Yeah, maybe we should have asked Mary Morgan to join the cult and not her joke of a father. That snide little comment broke Levi from the evil grasps of Edge's manipulative greed and hunger, and for the first time in months, we saw a glimpse of the old Leviticus, no longer under a trance of evil, but instead the resident outlaw of old, and the crowd went berserk. Calamity Jane's left, Calamity Jane's right, and a high noon was the icing on the cake as Leviticus fought back and, most importantly, fought for his daughter's name in Mary Morgan, who would go on to blaze a path in her own right, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. After snapping on his former mentor and cult members Edge and Damian Priest, Levi was done with being a protege, and the scene was set for what might go down as the hottest SummerSlam of all time. On one end, Riddle and Karrion Kross would finally settle their differences after their dark departure. Dante Inferno would battle The Undertaker for the first time ever. Roman Reigns would defend his Universal Championship against Drew McIntyre. The American Nightmare would try to do what his father never could as he battled Brandon Collins for the WWE Championship. Alexa Bliss and Amber Van Cise promised it would be the end of the world as you know it if they didn't win back their women's tag titles. But perhaps above all else, after months of manipulation, greed and jealousy at the hands of Edge, the resident outlaw was back, and Leviticus would finally get his hands on the cult leader. But some tales are simply destined to end in tragedy. It was a welcome returning sight to the WWE Universe to see Levi ride his chopper to the ring just like old times at SummerSlam, which truly signified that he had freed himself from the grasps of Edge and was ready to be himself again. The man who his late wife knew, the man who his daughter in the audience knew, and the man he knew he needed to be. Edge, of course, entered with his classic dark demeanor alongside Damian Priest, who had promised great reform for the now named Judgment Day going forward after SummerSlam. But they first wanted to quote-unquote rid the world of the embarrassment that is Leviticus right in front of his daughter's very eyes. The match began with an icy stare down between former protege and cult leader, but the crowd, maybe for the first time in Leviticus's career, were firmly behind him. He had never quite seen eye to eye with everything Levi had done in his career, but let's be honest, no man is ever truly good, no man is ever truly evil. Everyone can relate to fighting for their family and doing whatever it takes to put food on that table, put a shelter over their head, and ensure their safety. This match got personal real quick, as months of tension came boiling over. Leviticus was pulling out all the stops, and so was Edge, with his decades of decadence coming to light in this one. But Levi knew he couldn't lose, not on a stage like this, not in front of Mary Morgan, not against the man who had belittled him and talked smack for months, which he had to put up with. However, Edge would eventually get the upper hand, and things were looking rather dark for Levi's future, setting up for the spear as only Edge can, but then being won with the swiftness and with everything to fight for. Levi caught Edge with one of the most wicked Calamity Janes we have ever seen, turning him inside out. And then, in one of the most wholesome moments in SummerSlam history, the man who had barely popped a grin up until this point, Levi, would smile at his daughter Mary Morgan just moments before hitting a brutal high noon to Edge for the win. And in that moment, it felt as though a weight had been lifted off the shoulders of Levi. He could finally start a new chapter in the WWE now that the cult was behind him, and he could be a role model that his daughter could aspire to be like. But as I said way back at the beginning of this story, unfortunately, some tales are destined to end in tragedy. As Leviticus celebrated backstage with his daughter Mary Morgan, what should have been their moment of triumph as a family quickly turned sour. At that exact moment, a ripple effect had begun. In the ring, the Twisted Sisters were furious after failing to win back the women's tag titles. The Fury and the Anarchy had already developed a reputation for their dark arts and devious past after seemingly zapping Natalya and Beth Phoenix into God knows where during their NXT days in a fit of rage and anger. But this was on a much larger scale. This loss had sent Amber and Alexa collectively over the deep end as they began to murmur what seemed like gibberish but was actually a spell to open the multiverse. A spell that would, as Alexa promised, be the end of the world as you know it. Alexa and Amber had, even in loss, entered a higher form of being, and slowly, the WWE roster began disappearing into the unknown. Alexa and Amber certainly didn't want to play nice in the playground that was the multiverse and would hold it hostage until they got everything they wanted, and then maybe, just maybe, they'd show mercy and let things return to the way they once were. But it was taking an incredible amount of energy out of both women just to keep this grasp over the entire multiverse alive, and so they would have others do their bidding as they sat back and watched chaos ensue. The Twisted Sisters had selected a group of chosen ones who would be void from being blipped into God knows where, but would remain and have to complete a set of objectives and challenges in order to restore the multiverse, along with an ominous cry that, quote, a final ultimate sacrifice would also need to be made to the Twisted Sisters. And maybe the most heartbreaking scene of all, Leviticus, in his moment of triumph and happiness, was forced to watch as his own daughter, Mary Morgan, was blipped away.